Hi you guys, it's Rhiannon, and I'm gonna do the hashtag could only keep 10 decks, and I am just like struggling with this so much. And I feel like I probably didn't pick my favorite decks, but like the Capricorn in me wanted to be practical and pick the decks that are worth the most and that are the most rare, even though they're not the decks that I pick the most. So I don't know. I probably need to do several of these. Like, my 10 favorite decks are not necessarily the 10 decks that I would keep if I could only keep 10. So, um, so let's get into it. I only picked one Oracle, even though I have a ton of Oracle and I run a group called Oracle Obsessed, and I do love Oracle, but I just don't really work with it that much anymore. But I chose my first ever Oracle deck as well as my first ever Tarot deck. So that's what we're going to start with. For me, well, actually, we'll start with my first ever Tarot deck. So my first ever Tarot deck I purchased when I was about 18 years old, which was a very long time ago. This would have been like 96, 97. And it was the Mythic Tarot. And I purchased it at a Hastings bookstore that was in my local area. I'm trying to find I don't have the box for it. It's in a bag. So I just keep it in a velvet bag. And I walked in and I was just like mesmerized by it. And I'm sure there were other like Rider-Waite-Smith type decks, near it, but it was the Mythic Tarot that drew me in. And if you guys know, the original set comes with a book and it comes with the black reading cloth with the Celtic crossbred. And I purchased it and I tried to learn, and it just was not the right time for me. And there was no internet. I talk about this a lot. There was no internet. And at the time, you would need to be apprenticed by somebody. And I live in Utah, and most of the people here are Mormon LDS. And so tarot wasn't a terribly popular, hobby. So Mythic Tarot is going to be one that I'm going to always have to have because it was my original, just it was what called me and drew me in. It's a beautiful, obviously Greek pantheon style. And now that I'm like learning more about astrology, the cards speak to me in a way that they didn't before because, there's a lot of astrological associations. And it's just a fun, cool deck. And, I just am I'm very emotionally attached to it. Here's the guidebook. So I actually ended up losing the original one. I'm still hoping that it's going to find its way back to me, but I ended up finding this version on eBay and purchasing it about 2 years ago because I literally just had to have it. Okay, so then my first ever Oracle deck was the Judy Hall Crystal Wisdom Healing Oracle. And really, this is where it all began for me because although I had purchased a tarot deck in the late 90s, I really wasn't working with it because I just couldn't figure it out. Then I went on my spiritual path. And then in 2014, I took a crystal healing certification course and totally was obsessed with crystals. So I purchased this really more as a tool because I had heard that it was designed to be used in healings, and it is, and I recommend it. Now, as a double certified crystal healer, and I'm a Reiki master and Karuna Reiki master, I can tell you how powerful this deck is. So it was designed that you could use these cards. Oh gosh. You could use these cards in place of certain crystals if you didn't have them. So if you're an aspiring crystal therapist and you can't afford or don't have room or can't access certain rare crystals, but you really want to be able to use them in your healings, then this was the deck. So I purchased it for crystal healing, not realizing that I was going to fall in love with divination and start using it for divination. And so, yeah. And plus, Judy Hall writes the most amazing books on crystals. She passed away this year. So rip Judy Hall. And I feel kind of emotional. And it's not like I knew her, but this deck changed my life because it got me reading Oracle, which then Oracle got me back to like my tarot roots. And now here I am. It's my full-time job. So I definitely recommend this. It's one of the only books, I mean, it's one of the only decks out of Tarot or Oracle that I literally use the book every single time. You can see that I have it marked. You guys, the book is so freaking powerful. If you have this deck and you're not using the guidebook, you're doing yourself a disservice. It has been spot on for me and for clients. I always pull it out during Reiki sessions, and it just is so good, you guys. So definitely 10 out of 10. Love this deck. And even though, like, it wouldn't be used for traditional divination, I guess you could. Like, I just only use the guidebook, but it's so spot on. Like, and it got me back in touch with my intuition. And it really, this is what really started it all. Even though I bought the Mythic Tarot, you know, so long ago, this was the deck that changed it. And then I've been on a downward spiral of buying decks ever since. So those are the two main ones. Then, of course, and I'm sure this one's going to be on a lot of people's, the Light Seers. Now, this is my Kickstarter version, but I also have my mass market version, which is the one that I use because I want to keep this one. I've used this one, and I would never sell it because I just love it so much. But I want to keep the card stock really pristine, and I don't want to chip the edges. But my Light Seers deck is definitely in my top 10 of both the decks that I would keep if I could only have 10 decks, and my top 10 favorite decks. I love this deck. It's so, I love it. It's so intuitive. It's so accurate. Clients love it. It's just welcoming, you know, I guess it's just welcoming. So I would definitely keep that. Then I have picked the Sacred India Tarot. You guys, don't confuse this. There's two decks. One's called the Sacred India and one's called something. I don't know. There's a knockoff one. Okay. And this one was not available for a while, but I think it's back again. It's quite an expensive deck, but it's worth it. It's got a really nice magnetic closure. But if you are into Vedic, you know, practices, Hinduism and such, which I am, yoga, Ayurveda, all things, you know, Vedic. It's a beautiful, beautiful deck. I feel like now that I have some more experience trimming decks, I may end up trimming it. But it kind of gives me like heart palpitations to think about trimming it because at the time, it was the most expensive deck I had ever purchased. I'm pretty sure it was around $130. And that was like just what it cost. Like that wasn't buying it from somebody else who had like marked up the price. That was just what it had cost. Now I can say that I have spent 4 times that on a deck, which I have just purchased this weekend. I'm not going to tell you guys about it, but I'm pretty sure that will definitely be in my top 10 of both, definitely because of the value and the expense of it, but I just already know I'm going to love it. So this deck is so unique, so beautiful. Again, like the guidebook is amazing. Here's the guidebook, which comes with it, which I like. What I don't like is when there's a really juicy guidebook, but it doesn't come with a book. Like, you know, love Benabel Wen, love My Spirit Keepers, which we're going to talk about. But the book of maps is like another $40. So I just feel like it should come with it for the price that you're paying. So the book's really good. The deck is beautiful. The inside of the box is just gorgeous. And I would never want to be without this deck. In fact, I need to be working with it more, so I should probably leave it out and use it for December. It's a good deck to use for like your year ahead type, you know, stuff. So I will probably leave this one out. So Sacred India, definitely on the list. And I'm trying not to just throw everything on the floor, but that'll lead us to our next deck. And I'm pretty sure I purchased that one, this one this year, which is the Last Unicorn Tarot. And I was obsessed with this show as a little girl growing up in the early 80s. You guys know, anybody that's a Gen Xer like me, you guys know how amazing this book was. I actually bought 2 versions. So up on my shelf, which you probably can't see, maybe if I tilt it up, I bought the on that shelf. If you can see that wooden box on the top shelf, I bought the collector's edition that has the wooden box. And I was so afraid I was going to like mess up this deck that then I went back and bought a second version. So I actually own 2 versions of this deck. It does have a nice little, it's a little white book, but it's a substantial little white book. And it does have a color picture. I see a lot of tarot trade, buy, sell, trade groups. Sorry that you guys have to keep looking at my hand. I see a lot of people that are confused and seem to think that you can't find this deck anymore. You can find it on Geekify. I'm not affiliated with them, but you can get this deck on geekify.com. So The Last Unicorn was like one of my favorite movies, still is. Gorgeous deck. I love the back of it. I love the gold gilding, really high quality card stock. I mean, look at that Hermit, you guys. The Hermit's one of my favorite cards ever. And look at that unicorn. How do you not just love this deck? Like, it's everything. That Queen of Wands. It's just so good. Like, I'm not a huge Disney girl. I did buy the Disney Villains deck, and, you know, I'm a tarot collector, but I am, like, a huge this type of cartoon. Like, I was more into more of those type of cartoons than Disney, per se. Because really, the Disney cartoons at the time were still, like, just the classic, you know, Snow White, Cinderella, etc. that were so old. Little Mermaid didn't come out until I was, like, in 6th grade. So I love this deck. Oh, this guy's so scary. Look how scary that is. So definitely top 10 and top 10 favorite decks. It's so, I don't read with it enough. I need, again, like, I like these type of hashtags because it's kind of a reminder that I need to, like, keep this deck out and work with it. So The Last Unicorn, so good. What should we go to next? One that I've just recently added to my favorite decks. I just barely did an unboxing of last week. You guys can go back and watch that if you wish. It is the Marielle Tarot, and it's out of production, and also the author is passed away recently. So the value of this deck has gone up quite a bit. It's such a unique system. There's still a couple things that are irking me about it. Like, you know, it gives you it gives you like the seasonal associations. So for instance, like wands are spring, pentacles are winter, swords are fall. But then it calls the King of Swords the King of Winter, which swords is spring. And he even says it right here. It says spring. Oh, no, sorry. Spring is wands because the cardinal is Aries. So cardinal autumn is Libra, right? So then King of Swords should be autumn, not winter. Because air is swords. And swords is the autumn equinox. And then the summer equinox is Cancer, so water. And the winter solstice is earth, so pentacles. So like tells you that, but then I don't know, I'm not going to get into it, but the artwork is amazing, so good. And like for the page cards, for each page there's like an elemental or a dragon. So like one of them's a mermaid, but the rest of them are dragons. Like look at this High Priestess. I'm not going to do very many flip through here because I literally just did a flip through of this entire deck, but I was not expecting to fall in love with this deck like I did. It just is so good. So one that I didn't think very many people would have, one that's a unique deck. It really just clicked with me. Despite, like, usually because I'm so anal, something like that King of Swords might have really just made me like not like this deck at all. But everything else about it was so good. And if anybody's familiar with this deck and the author and why she did that, I would love to know. I guess she wrote a more complete book for this, but I haven't been able to get my hands on it, so. The Marielle Tarot, then we're going to go with my Spirit Keepers Vitruvian Edition. Love this deck. Love all Benebell's decks. I did just receive the Revelation Edition. However, I'm not going to be handling that, not even for a flip through, because she's going to be releasing more prints of that deck, and I'm going to buy another print, kind of like with my light seers, so that I can keep the first print like in pristine edition or pristine condition for value purposes, and then I'll buy another one that I can work with. But this is the Vitruvian edition. So similar to Revelation, but it's not colored. It's just the sepia color, but beautiful gold gilding. You know, I'm sure everybody is familiar. But I think one of the things that I love, like, you guys, I love the word initiate. I just do. I love it. I love it. I study Hermeticism. I consider myself an initiate or a neophyte. And I love systems that use that type of, it's very occultic, very much occult. Tons of symbology. You've got your astrological associations on each card and planetary associations, which I like. So I just can't say enough good things about this deck. Do love the book of maps as well. Yeah, it's just a great deck. But yeah, if you didn't get it, you're going to be paying like $500 for a copy. So it is a valuable deck, but it's a beautiful and powerful deck. Okay, then I've picked also the Marielle Tarot. This is the first edition. I would definitely personally consider this more of like a shadow work deck. It's definitely more dark, more, you know, shadow energy, I would say, from my perspective. Maybe not everybody, but from my personal opinion. Let me grab the cards. It is a first edition, although I did purchase this deck used. Now, I just seen somebody do her top 10, and she chose the Marielle as well, but hers was borderless, and I don't know if she trimmed hers, or if the second, third, or whatever editions, maybe they have an edition now that's borderless. I'm going to have to look into that, but I love the Marielle. The artwork is, you know, impeccable. But definitely, you know, dark. It's more on the darker side. Maybe not quite like Deviant Moon dark, but for me, I would say this is probably one of the darker decks I have. I am definitely a light worker, and I'm not as attracted to the darker shadows. I don't judge it. I mean, there are people that are shadow workers. I'm a light worker, but we all have to do our shadow work. So I do think this is a good deck for shadow work. The guidebook's amazing. You know, it's just a great deck. So Marielle, Landscapes of the Abyss on the list for sure. And I usually keep this one up on those shelves as well. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, number 9. This is a very, very, very rare deck. This one is from like the 30s or 40s, or let me see. Okay, copyright 1936, renewed in 1964. So this is from 1964. It's the Brotherhood of the Light Egyptian Tarot cards from the Church of Light. And it's a different system. Like, for instance, the swords are really the earth element, and the pentacles are really the air element. So there's definitely some differences here. They were not working with the planet Pluto at the time. So some of the, it's more like, you know, the ancient, I bought this used, obviously. So it's literally just like cardboard. They're white. Here's the back of it. There's our magician. And they do have astrological associations, although they're not going to match up with what you might think they do because it's an older system. There's our high priestess. They also have the Hebrew letter associated. So I'm pretty sure the Justice card is one that is different. Let's look. Look how scary this Hermit is. I don't like that at all. He looks more like the Hierophant, and I don't really care for the Hierophant, and that's the Hermit. So I don't love that. There's the Wheel of Fortune. Their Strength card is number 11, similar to the Thoth, right? And then, what was number 8 then? Number 8, let's see. 5, 7, 8, maybe. I mean, it kind of looks like it could be strength because there is a lion there. They're very similar. Like, look at those cards. So it's a different system. I'm studying it, so I'm not an expert on this at this time. The book that I use to study this is the Sacred Tarot by C.C. Zane, also from the Brotherhood of the Light. You can see it's quite a study, right? It's different from any other system. This was my bookmark. I had a chewed up Queen of Wands, so I use it as my bookmark in here. It's definitely a different system, but like these are the type of decks that I study for like knowledge purposes, not for divination. So it's just like a tool for me to learn. And I'm like balls deep in it. So I definitely would be keeping this deck because I have come so far and I am not turning around now and I have so much to learn. Like, definitely hashtag neophyte when it comes to the Sacred Tarot or the Egyptian Tarot, Brotherhood of the Light. They do have an updated version. It's not in my top 10, but for anybody that's looking to add it to their collection, this is the updated version, and they're color. The cards are colored. So have that as well. So that's number 9, and then number 10 is my Tabula Mundi. Just love the artwork. So good. I have the pocket size as well. And again, this is a deck that I study more for, you know, that type of a thing versus using it for divination. So I use the book, this book. My bookmarks are flying out everywhere, you guys. This book. Oh, this is the Rosetta Tarot. Sorry, this is the Rosetta Tarot, but I have the Tabula Mundi as well. The Tabula Mundi is the smaller one, but this is the same author. So this is the Rosetta. They're similar. So there's the book. I haven't really dug into the book yet because I'm going to do this one first. But you can see it's also an Egyptian theme. And it's got like it's got a cartouche on the bottom with like the Egyptian writing. So I'm definitely into the Egyptian stuff right now. That reminds me, you guys. See, this is why I can't do this. One of the top 10 that I definitely should have included is an oracle deck that I have that is really rare. And it is definitely in my top 10. Okay, so when would I give up to add this? That's the question. I would give up, I guess I'm giving up the Mary Day Tarot. So we're going to take this one out. And we're going to add the Cartouche, The Way of the Cartouche by Murray Hope. This was in the 80s. This is a hard deck to come by. Of course, I bought it used. It's not really an oracle system or a tarot system. It's its own system. And it's super duper accurate. But you have to have the book and do the readings the way that the book says to do the readings. And it's pretty intense. So I would definitely keep this in my top 10. It is rare, but it's also like such a unique system. The Way of the Cartouche. Some people say Cartouche. It's tomato, as far as I'm concerned. So I believe there are 20, let's see. Let me see, 25 cards, I think. Let's see, 25. I'm all over the place with this one, you guys. 17. Number 1. Let me just look in the book. I need to get a better way to keep this deck safe. So yeah, I bought this last year, December. I write my name and the date in all my books. So December 26, 2020. This was my early birthday present to myself. But you have to have the accompanying guidebook. Now, if you look, you can find the book pretty easily, but you can't find the cards. But I guess if you wanted, you could easily look up the images and make your own cards and then just use the book. So you could create your own version. And it's hard for me because this card, there are reversed meanings, but it says explicitly in the book to make sure that all the cards are upright. Do not shuffle or put any of the cards upside down. And it says if they're meant to come upside down, they will. Even though you're meticulous about making sure that they don't, they will come in reverse. So there's 25. Yeah, 25 cards. And it's such a unique, if you guys want, because I don't think I ever did do a video or walkthrough of this. If you guys want, let me know, leave a comment, and I can do a video of this because it's such a unique thing. So that's going to be added to the list. And yeah, we were on the Rosetta. They're so gorgeous, you guys. I can't. M.M. Moline. I also recommend listening to her podcast called the, not the Wheel of Fortune, it's something Wheel and something Fortune podcast, but it's not the Wheel of Fortune podcast. The Fortune's Wheel, maybe? Podcast. It's really good. And when you order one of these decks from her website, it will come with your own name put in a cartouche. So that's my name, which is kind of cool. So I'm into the Egyptian thing right now. And that really exciting deck that I just paid over $400 for is in the same category. I wonder if any of you guys can guess what deck it is. So it's very rare. There were only 1,000 copies ever made. It's Egyptian in theme. And I paid over $400 for it. And so, yeah, take a guess. And if anybody gets it right, that's, you know, not in my Oracle group because I already said it there. Oh, I love that card. So good. Then maybe I'll give you a reading with it. So, yeah, those are my top 10. But, you know, honestly, if I was being honest with myself, I would have picked my Morgan Greer. I love that deck so much. I work with it every single day. I would have picked my Radiant Weight because, again, I work with it every day. Those are the decks that I use for work, and I work with them the most because I do readings for other people for them. But these are the decks that I use. I don't do readings for myself, but that I study. So they're still more like my thing. So I do think in that sense that it makes sense. And in that, we're going to go ahead and close this video out. So here's my VR. Hashtag 10 decks. Bye.